Skinwalker? I stammered, following the old priest into the church. He nodded.
Yes. Your father always had a problem with them. Have you never wondered why he kept you kids out of the woods? Let me call Pierce. He'll probably want to come look into this personally, and he's about the only priest crazy enough to take on such a thing. At the very least, maybe you can get into the church's version of protected custody until someone can cleanse the space.
He led me over to the little kitchen on the back of the rectory and told me to help myself to whatever I wanted from the fridge. And so he went to call Pierce. I waited until he was gone to use the phone. And I didn't expect to get a hold of Mom. She was in observation. But I wanted to leave her a voicemail and just tell her how sorry I was. More than anything, I just wanted to listen to the 5 or 6 seconds of her voicemail message and hear her voice. I missed her, and I was worried that she wouldn't forgive me. I was a little kid again. A little kid who wanted his mommy. And as it started to ring, I waited for the voicemail. So you can imagine my surprise when she picked up on the first ring.
Tyler?
Mom said, and she sounded a little frantic. Mom, please, I am so sorry, I said, half crying. I should have believed you. I should have trusted you. I was just so stupid. I just wanted Dad back. I hope that you could please find it in your heart to forgive me. I wanted Dad back so bad. I wanted to believe that it was him and—
Don't you dare,
she breathed, pitching her voice low.
Don't you dare say that again. I understand that you're hurting, but I won't sit here and let you belittle yourself. You did what you believed was right, and I'm not mad at you for it. I don't have long to talk. The nurse comes every 15 minutes and checks on me, and it was hard enough to get to this phone.
Oh, wait, how do you even have a phone? I asked, suddenly curious.
Father Pierce,
she said, smiling.
I called him to be my spiritual advisor, and he came down to help me.
I nodded, surprised but also glad. Why didn't he come to help me if he believed you?
He knew that you would need to come to that decision on your own. Otherwise, it would only lead to him being taken away in cuffs. I don't have long. Tyler, are you somewhere safe?
Yeah.
Then you know what you have to do. Only you can take back the mortuary, and you need to do it soon. The Skinwalker won't wait for long before he wrestles control from you, so you'll have to be quick. Call for help, call your friends, and be safe, my love. I'll be out by tomorrow, and I'm coming to the church when I do so they can't come after me. If you aren't there, get there and plan it out on consecrated—
She stopped, listening.
I have to go. I love you, sweetie. Be safe.
And then she hung up, and I sat at the table, feeling very alone. And when Father Thomas came back, I had mostly stopped tearing up.
Father Pierce said that he will be here tomorrow. He wants you to stay here until then. I can put you down in the guest room until then, but I don't think that I'll be much help with the whole Skinwalker thing. I might be able to provide other help, though.
He led me to the back and showed me a small room with a cot and a lamp. It looked more like a broom closet than a guest room, but I was frankly exhausted after my flight from the mortuary. I lay down, staring at the ceiling, and I tried to make my brain slow down and stop talking so loudly. I had things to do, plans that I needed to make, but instead of ordering my life, these things swam around in my head like a swarm of bees. And when I finally fell asleep, it was almost a mercy, though it wouldn't last long. Because I was right back in the woods, running for my life from whatever had been chasing me. I ran and I ran and I ran, taking turns through the harrowing forest at random. The branches clung to me, the roots tried to rip me, and as I ran in terror, I finally heard my father calling to me. I ran to him, despite what I had seen earlier, and when I ran into his arms, I knew that it was my dad, my real dad. This was no costumed wannabe, no thing wearing his skin. It was really him, and I cried against him as he protected me with his body.
"We had a deal,"
said the creaky old voice.
"and your child had broken this arrangement.
I can't remember ever seeing Dad scared, but I heard it in his voice that night.
Please, he's a boy, and he's not part of our deal.
Let his transgressions pass. I will do anything.
Anything?
The voice asked. I looked up at Dad and I saw him make the decision as he looked down at me.
Yes,
he answered. Yes, anything.
When your bones are cold, and your heart no longer beats, and your soul has passed beyond, you will give us your body and become ours. Do you promise this?
If it will wipe the debt clean, then I swear it. The laughter swelled behind us before it fell as the laughter retreated into the woods. As I came awake, one thought premeditated above all the others, a realization that I should have come to before now. It was my fault. I was the reason that this thing had taken my dad. I started to feel tears roll down my face when my phone started blaring, "I'm not a vampire." I jumped about a foot and reached for the phone, looking down to see a picture of Corey that he had sent me to use as his profile picture. He wouldn't photograph, and when I showed him the picture of Lestat I had saved on his contact, he shook his head but said that it was better than nothing. I picked it up on the third ring, not sure what to expect.
Hello?
I said.
Tyler? Are you okay? Thank goodness, I was afraid they had gotten you.
What had gotten to me? I asked, sitting up and realizing that it was morning.
The things inside your mortuary. I came with your delivery and I found the basement full of skinwalkers. They were with something that looked like your dad. At least that's what my dad said, and Dad said it sounded like something he told me not to talk about.
Wait, I said, sitting up. You went to the mortuary? Are you okay? I heard him trade shoulders with the phone as someone asked who he was talking to.
It's Tyler,
he whispered.
Yeah, okay. Victoria says hi, and she's glad you're okay. She was worried too. Yeah, I'm all right though. I got away without too much trouble. Do you need some help? Victoria says she'll help you, and I'm willing to as well.
I was silent for a second, not sure what to say to this. I liked Corey a lot, and I was warming up to Victoria. I didn't want to get either of them hurt, but I'd be a fool not to take them up on their offer. I needed all the help that I could get, and I knew it. I could use your help, I finally said, hating the way that it tasted. I really could use your help. Maybe your father's help too, if he's willing. And Corey was quiet for a moment, and I was worried that I'd lost him.
I can't promise Dad's help. He likes you well enough, but when I told him about whatever it was, he got paler than usual and said it was a shame to lose such an old client as your family, but those were the breaks. I'll ask him, but I doubt he'll help. Louis might, though. I don't know how much help he could be, but he might help. Do you have anybody else that could help?
I thought about it, and I finally told him that I thought that I did.
Where are you?
Corey asked.
We can come get you after sunset, so we can make plans.
He hissed a little when I told him, but he offered to meet me on the sidewalk outside before saying that he would call me when he got there. I hung up and I scrolled through my phone until I found the number for Cerberus Security. If anyone knew how to get rid of these things, I thought that it would be Jericho and his boys. Jericho and Cerberus had seen about everything, and the thought that these things could get a leg up on them was unthinkable. A soothing, gruff voice picked up the second phone, and I thought that I had gotten Jericho for a moment.
Cerberus Security, guarding your event like the gates of hell. This is Cato. How can I?
But someone had already started fussing at them from the other end of the phone.
Yeah, I said that, Father. Hi.
He made a disgusted noise, and I could almost hear him talking through his teeth.
Thank you for calling Cerberus Security, protecting your event like the gates of Hades since 134 BC. This is Cato speaking. How may I help you?
Yeah, is Jericho there?
One moment,
said the voice, and I heard them put a hand over the receiver.
Father, it's for you.
Someone took the phone, and I heard a deeper voice answer.
This is Jericho.
Jericho, I said, my voice cracking a little. It's Tyler. I mean the mortician from Garvey Mortuary. I need... I stopped, not trying to sound weaker than I actually felt.
Kid, are you okay?
Jericho said, concerned as I heard the squeak of a chair on the other end.
Are you or your mother in any danger?
Something took the mortuary, I said, hating the tears that I could hear in my voice. It came dressed as my dad, and I thought that he'd come back to life or something. Now there are these animal things in there. The priest thinks that they're skinwalkers, and I just need help. I will pay, I'll pay whatever it takes, but Jericho cut me off with a hard sigh.
We do not engage in contracts that involve skinwalkers. Those missions require at least 3 squads at a minimum. A more likely answer for a successful mission would come from the drop of an incendiary grenade.
I closed my eyes, shaking a little at the thought of my home, my mother's home, as a crater in the parking lot. Jericho, I need help. I don't know what to do. I do have friends who are willing to help, but I need some real muscle. I'll do whatever it takes, but I need my home and I need my business back. But most of all, I need to put my father to rest. Jericho sighed.
Where is your mother? Can you confirm that she is in a secure location?
His voice had taken on a deep growl, and it dried me up a little. I explained the situation before the discovery, and that seemed to ease him a little, but not much.
I need you to listen to me when I say that you have screwed the pooch on this one. And that is not a phrase that I use lightly. The pack under my command will obey any order that I give them except for this one. None of them would willingly hunt a skinwalker. They are dangerous, and attempting to engage with them would be considered a death sentence. Caro shared intel with me regarding a conversation that he had with your father. He informed me that in the old forest near your home is an entity that you do not name. It was classified by the indigenous people of this country, who would not even name it then. The closest thing that we could even begin to understand it as from our culture would be a vengeful fallen angel, a hateful mouthpiece for the old spirits.
I took a moment to take in all of what Jericho had said. I was asking for a lot, but he was my only hope if I had any chance of taking back my home. Look, Jericho, I have a priest, a vampire, a succubi, and an investment banker, but none of us are tacticians or even warriors. I need someone who knows what they're doing. I really need your help. And he thought about it for a minute, and I could almost hear his eyebrows knitting together.
Like I said, no one in our pack will stand with you against a skinwalker. No one except for me.
I had been ready to fall into despair, but Jericho's words lifted me up again. Wait, are you serious?
Affirmative. I ask only one thing. When it is dead, I want its skin.
There was a loud exclamation from beside him, but Jericho growled at them to regain the silence from the room. The skin? I asked, not sure what to make of it.
Not your father's skin, but the skin of this elder walker. It has come to my attention that there are some differing opinions regarding leadership amongst my ranks. A few of the younger pack members wish to challenge me, and while I do not see them as any more than a flea to be scratched, they would not dare try such a thing when I come back with the pelt of this elder being. Then, there will be no more thoughts about who continues to run this pack. I will exfil now, and I can be on site within a few hours. I just need the location's DZ.
The what?
The location of you and your crew.
Jericho sighed, clearly annoyed by my lack of knowledge regarding military terminology. I gave him the address of the coffee shop in town, and he said that he would be there. And as I hung up, I was much more confident of my chances than I had been. Sunset was only about 5 hours from now, my watching letting me know that I had slept most of the day. And with Jericho on board, we might actually have a chance. I got myself together, trying to think of whoever else I could contact. But that was when a soft knock came from the door to my sleeping area. and I opened it to find Father Pierce smiling at me from the doorway.
Your mother will be coming here in a few hours. I told the hospital your home wasn't a place that she could safely cohabitate in for the time being, and they agreed to let her stay with a trusted spiritual counselor like myself.
I started to stammer out a thanks, but he raised a hand to stop me.
She wanted me to say she forgives you for not believing her, and I hold no ill will against you for your choices. We all get led astray sometimes, but now is the time to make amends. Have you made plans to take your home back?
I nodded, telling him that I had people who would help me, and he seemed glad.
Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. That being said,
he gave me a wink.
Let's see if we can keep the life laying down to a minimum. The only dirt naps I want to see are from the hellspawn who are in your mortuary. Tell me everything,
he said, coming in to get the rest of the story. Corey agreed to meet us there, but the streetlights had just come on when we pulled up outside the Green Beans Coffee and Father Pierce's Escalade. I don't know what I expected Father Pierce to drive, but a classic Escalade was certainly not it. Now, it was nice, despite being about 10 years old. There was a crucifix hanging from the rearview mirror, and a Bible on the dash open to Deuteronomy. When I asked him why, Father Pierce had smiled and laughed.
Deuteronomy 31:8. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. It always brings me peace when I travel. Plus, I think it cuts down on my speeding tickets.
As we pulled up, he closed his eyes and I felt something like soft music around him. He was praying silently, and I had no doubt that God was listening. He wore his faith like a warm blanket, and when he opened his eyes and grabbed his bag, he said that he was ready. Wait, I said. I should warn you before we meet them that some of my friends might not be in line with your beliefs. He cocked an eyebrow.
Go on.
Well, Corey's a vampire, and Victoria's a succubi, and Jericho is a hellhound. And I think Louis is a human, but he's a banker for hybrids, But I noticed Father Pierce's raised eyebrows.
Lord's name, why would you surround yourself with such people?
I started to bristle, but when he smiled knowingly, I realized that he was kidding.
I mean, a banker of all things.
So you don't care that they are my friends?
I believe that God has a plan for all of us. Succubi, human, vampire, even Satan himself has a part in God's plan. It's not for me to judge. If they will stand with us against the darkness, then I will call them allies and be glad for them.
They were waiting for us in a booth near the back. Corey and Victoria sitting close enough to make me think that they might be conjoined. Louis seemed amused by them, and he waved when we came in. Pierce asked me what I'd like, and he said that he'd go place an order if I just wanted to sit down.
I find it's better when people are forewarned that they're going to be joined by a man of the cloth,
he said as he went to place our orders. Louis cocked an eye at me as I went to join them.
I didn't know you were bringing a clergyman with you. When Corey said you were hiding in a church, I just kind of assumed he'd misheard you.
I shook my head. Nope. It was the best place that I could find to hold up.
Is it just the five of us?
Corey asked, looking resigned but not seeming to like our odds. No, I've got one more. Our muscle. What about your dad? Corey rolled his eyes, putting on his best Malcolm voice.
Believe it or not, Cornelius, I have more pressing matters than the life of a single client. It's unfortunate that he has fallen on hard times, but he is also alive, so I trust his blood is still viable. Don't take it personally. He said the same thing to the Blade wannabes who kidnapped me when I was in boarding school. They just kind of let me go after that. It was a memorable 46th birthday, to be sure.
Poor baby.
Victoria cooed, ruffling his hair.
Could be worse. Mom got me a rando for my 16th birthday, and then complained when I couldn't extract his entire soul.
I swear it's just a big old trauma dick measuring contest with you two, isn't it?
Louis said with a laugh. Victoria glared at him.
At least I have someone to measure trauma with. Louis.
Louis smiled.
Don't flatter yourself, Stripperella. My mountains of cash mean I can afford the best therapy available.
Guys, I said as Father Pierce returned with the drinks. This isn't helping. We need to... But the bell rang, and I looked up to see a pair of bookends. Jericho was wearing what appeared to be SWAT gear, his holsters thankfully empty, with a ball cap pulled up over his ears. His grayish brindled hair stuck out from beneath it, and the sunglasses covered his very amber eyes. The other hound, shorter but just as intimidating, was dressed similarly, except he had a knife in one shoulder and a sheath. They saw us and they walked over, the littler one with his hands keeping his arms crossed and looking very stern. They didn't order any drinks. They just walked right over and took their seats.
Is that your muscle? Dang, you really went all...
But Father Pierce was getting up to stand between Jericho and the table. And for an old man, Pierce certainly cut an impressive figure, but I was still a little wary as he got in Jericho's way. Jericho's eyes went wide, and he put a hand up to stop the other hound.
Jericho,
said Father Pierce, his voice almost a whisper. Pierce, Jericho growled, putting a hand up on an empty holster.
Do you remember what I told you would happen if I ever saw you again after Kabul?
Yeah. You ready to make good on it, priest? I glanced at the poor kids working behind the counter, and they both looked like they were ready to bolt. The two moved towards each other like waves getting ready to crash against one another, and when they embraced, I let out a sigh.
You old dog, how have you been?
Pierce said, smiling as he pounded the hellhound on the back. Well, it would seem better than you. You've gone and gotten old on me, Jericho returned. Pierce threw him a wink.
Comes with the territory of being God's go-to man. Being in the Lord's good graces means I'm on a timer, and it feels like it's running low these days.
Mortician, I swear, if you told me that you had the Pope's What Works man on your team, I'd have agreed right away. The three of them took their seats at the table, and Jericho looked at me with a little surprise when the old priest sat down beside me. The smaller hellhound leaned back in his chair, continuing to keep his arms crossed, as his hypervigilance kept his eyes never in one place for too long. However, I did catch his eyes lingering on Victoria a little longer than was polite. I saw Corey bare his fangs at him briefly. The kid rolled his eyes and he looked back at me, clearly unimpressed. Where are my manners? Jericho said. This is my son, Cato. He's here to... But the younger one cut him off.
I'm here because you said that I could choose my first mission to run. I want this one.
I raised a questioning eye at Jericho, but he just shook his head. I did. However, I misjudged your ambitious nature.
I'm also going because Mother would not forgive me should you become KIA by yourself.
He clasped a muscular arm on his shoulder. Boy, I have been successfully engaging in ill-advised missions long before I whelped you. However, now it would seem that it is your turn. Jericho turned to the rest of us. You have acquired an impressive collection of misfits here. Have you given any thought regarding your plan for how you will regain the mortuary back? I opened my mouth, but I didn't really have any idea. I had hoped that they would have some sort of plan or something to make this work, but they all looked at me like I was already planning this out and was ready to put it in motion. I cleared my throat, took a sip of my iced mocha chai frappe, because I'm very secure in my masculinity and they are delicious, and started rambling. Well, they are in the basement as far as I know. There were 2 of them when I left, plus Dad, so I assume that they're still down there. I suppose there could be more, but I've been gone for most of the day, so I know that there are at least 3. I let my mouth bob for a moment before finally shaking my head. I have no idea what to do. Jericho nodded, looking over the priest and then to his son, who uncrossed his arms and leaned forward towards Corey.
Corey, is that correct?
He asked the vampire, nodding.
My intel on you is that your father operates a sort of delivery business, right?
Yeah, we do kind of what DoorDash does, except about 100 years before them.
So, you would be able to provide me with more information regarding how you travel to and enter the mortuary, correct?
Corey nodded, and Cato grabbed salt shakers and a napkin from other tables as he looked to his father for approval. One of the baristas started saying something, but Cato flashed her a look and she must have decided that she didn't get paid enough for this. Then Cato started laying out plans, and Father Pierce and Corey helped adjust a few things to fit the layout as the plan came together. Even Victoria piped in a time or two about the layout, and that seemed to raise some questioning looks from Corey, which he tried to divert.
Just so we're clear, Mortician, if you mean to deploy your vampire friend, it is imperative that this operation take place after sundown. It is currently 1900. However, we won't have full coverage of darkness until 20 or 2100. Profiles on these creatures suggest that this is when they are most active. So, once we infill, we will beeline to the basement, using the same route that the vampires utilize. Once inside, we will tactfully search and destroy whatever is denning in there. I would like the priest to cover the back door here, to ensure our 6 is covered. With that being said, Father, do you have any additional weapons that are effective against these creatures?
The Lord works in mysterious ways, and where there is evil, he will thwart it. I assure you, young man, to a skinwalker, the cross is as potent as it is to any creature who means God's children harm.
You. I do not know your name. However, you do not appear as...
Cato said as he pointed at Louis.
...sturdy as the others. Are you able to use a shotgun?
Point the boom tube at the thing you want dead and launch the freedom seeds. Yeah, I think I can handle it.
Louis drawled.
In that case, you'll be stationed with the priest. How about you, Mortician? You ever fire a weapon?
I nodded. Dad wasn't a hunter, but he liked guns and to stay ready. Taught my siblings and I to shoot almost anything that you could buy at Walmart.
Roger,
Cato said.
You, my father, and I will work as a 3-man team to clear the mortuary. Once inside, we will attempt to redirect their attacks towards Father Pierce.
The bug zapper may be danger close. However, it shouldn't be an issue, Jericho stated to the group. And I looked at the priest and mouthed, Bug zapper? But he flapped a hand at Jericho and looked to Cato to continue.
The vampire and succubi will clear the upstairs portion of the home. Should anything get past you, our team or the father's team will be on standby. This is where communication will be paramount. Should you two encounter the big one before we do, disengage and funnel it down to us in the basement.
Corey nodded and I saw Victoria nodding too, though less enthusiastically. And then Jericho spoke again. This mission will likely not last long. We will either have mission success, or their forces will overwhelm us. Should I go down, do not attempt to come back for me. Including you, he said, looking towards his son who attempted to protest. Get yourselves out of there, and make sure that this one gets back to your vehicle before you inevitably start your martyr impersonation. Pierce snorted.
Death in the service of the Lord is a noble act. Might get me a special parking spot in heaven, so I don't have to fly so far to Mass.
Nervous laughter came after that, but Jericho was silent. And so we started our drive to the mortuary, and my stomach felt like I had swallowed a swarm of bees. Cato was in the back with me, his once empty holsters now bristling with weapons. In addition to the knife, he carried 3 handguns, a rifle propped against the seat, and something boxy secured in a special holster above his tail. Jericho was equally armed, and they had outfitted me with a vest, a holstered gun, and a shotgun that looked straight out of Call of Duty. Jericho had warned me to handle both carefully, as they packed a serious punch. Your weapons contain Cerberus-grade incendiary rounds that won't warp the barrel like Dragon's Breath rounds do. These silver-tipped 45s are the highest caliber that I have. I hope that you can understand how expensive they are. So aim effectively. He had given Louis a similar loadout, instructing him to firmly brace the shotgun's buttstock against his shoulder before firing. Louis, Corey, and Victoria were also given radios for communication. Once everyone was equipped and armed, we gathered into our teams to depart. Louis joined Father Pierce in the Escalade as Corey and Victoria got into his Prius, and Cato, Jericho, and I climbed into his beat-up old Jeep. As I leaned my head against the shotgun's buttstock, trying not to throw up, I turned to find Cato's eye intently boring into me. What? I asked, feeling self-conscious under his icy bluish amber gaze.
Nothing,
he said.
I'm just trying to figure out if I need to lift my feet before you puke.
Boy, Jericho growled from the front seat. It's fine, Jericho, I said, leaning the barrel carefully against the seat beside me. Look, if we're going to head into this together, we need to clear the air. What is your problem with me? And Cato scoffed.
Other members of the pack talk of the Mortician as if he is some action hero, that he could stand side by side with us. However, as I see him in person, I'm not impressed. Your shadow seems to be bigger than you are.
I heard Jericho growl a little from the front, but I just nodded in response to his challenge. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I am scared, because this is all new to me, and I'm not used to it. I'm not used to throwing ghosts out of my mortuary or fighting creatures with weapons and machetes. I'm not even used to being paid in hubcaps and shiny rocks. I am just not used to any of this. That being said, I'm learning, and I'm trying, and I am owning up to my mistakes, one of which is what we are going to handle tonight. So like me or don't, I just need you to shoot straight and keep your shit together. Cato lifted his eyes like he wasn't used to being spoken to like that, but nodded as he checked his guns for about the 100th time. We pulled up into the parking lot at Garvey's mortuary about 10 minutes later. Even in the headlights of the Jeep, the whole place looked spooky. It was weird how the place that I lived in my whole life could look so different. But the whole place seemed to crawl with a weird aura. Whatever was in there had wrapped it, made it strange, and I wasn't completely sure that I even wanted it back. And even as I thought about it, bombing the place into a crater sounded like a better idea, but I shook that off. The miasma was coming from something inside, not the building. And once it was put to rest, all this would go back to normal. The seat creaked as Jericho rolled it forward, offering me a way out. "Let's dismount," he said, offering me a hand. I staggered a little as I came out. The vest that he'd given me was very heavy, and it kind of felt like there were actual chains inside of it. The layer pressed against me was smoother, maybe leather, but there was a hard layer in between that was probably Kevlar or something. All in all, it was like a life vest full of concrete, and I staggered a little under its weight. "I understand that it's heavy," Jericho said, patting his own vest, "but it'll stop a werebear's claws, so it will probably do for these things too." "Do you fight werebears?" I asked, making sure the safety was still on the shotgun. "Not enough," Jericho said. "The wife has been bugging me for a replacement rug in the den after my youngest ruined it. Their hides are durable, but they are a bitch to scrub welches out of." Cato came around the other side, walking like he was prepping to go into Desert Storm. And as I thought of it, for all his bravado, he looked a little green too. Jericho put a hand on his shoulder, and when Cato tried to pull it back, he held him firm and put his forehead against his. Cato shuddered a little, but he stood it. The action clearly something that was familiar. "Peace, peace. We are the shadow at the gate, the teeth in the night, the sons of Pluto, the terror that runs in the pack. We are Cerberus," the two whispered, and when they separated, both appeared much calmer.
"All right,"
Cato said, sliding the safety of his rifle.
"Let's go."
Jericho and I fell in behind him, the parking lot seeming to stretch on for miles as we trekked towards the mortuary. "So, after telling me how dangerous this thing is and how nothing in your pack wants to tangle with it, why are you letting your son run this operation?" Jericho kept his eyes forward, watching Cato swing slowly back and forth as he checked for enemies that might decide to pop out of the concrete. "When a pup turns 6 and 10, he is allowed to make a request of his pack leader. And in this case, that is me." I raised an eyebrow. "Wait, you are the leader of Cerberus? I thought that was Caro." And Jericho scoffed. "Cerberus is a security firm, kid. We have a board of directors and shareholders. Technically, the head of Cerberus is Pluto, or Hades if you prefer. but I am the head of the pack of hellhounds that he employs at Cerberus. Now, I wasn't always, but at this point I am one of the older hellhounds in the organization. Me, Caro, and another hellhound named Attilas are all that's left of the original Legion who signed our souls over to the Lord of the Dead after we had fallen beneath the walls of Rome. I turned my head to look at him, and he nodded. As I recall, you asked how it happened once. My unit died beneath the walls of Rome as the barbarians overtook us. We fought for the man beside us, and we fought for the honor of Rome, if not for what little honor the throne still held. Pluto recognized our bravery or sacrifice, and told us that we could join his legions in Hades for all time. And we accepted. Not immortal, but damned hard to kill. Since then, we have served him loyally, but there is a point in every life when it must end. I am old, kid, and I know I won't last forever. He looked over at Cato as we approached the front of the mortuary, the doors coming into view as he swept the perimeter. I have to know that when my body gives up, there will be someone to take up my sword, someone who is strong enough to bear my body upon my shield, and someone who will carry the weight of my name with honor. I nodded, trying not to tear up and spoil the moment. I think my dad would have appreciated that sentiment. Jericho smiled and slapped me on the shoulder. I know that he would have. Caro has spoken highly of your father. Should our mission be successful, we shall gather for beer, and I will tell you stories that even your mother does not know.
Coming up to the target.
Cato told us, and we both tensed up as we gripped weapons.
Pack 1 is set. Entering the hot zone. Pack 2, are you in position? Over.
Ah, shit, that's me. Yeah, we're approaching the back door.
Cato waited and growled exasperatedly.
Say over when your traffic is done. Over.
Over and done, Kimosabi. Can we get rolling now or what? Over.
Pack 3, are you set? Over.
Yeah, I think so.
Corey said a little shakily.
We're in the... Vicky, not now. We're in the house. I don't see anything, though.
Fucking boots. Negative, Pack 3. You were not supposed to enter until the front door was breached. Go back to the foyer and await instructions. Over.
Silence, followed by more silence. Followed by the most ear-destroying static that you've ever heard as something let loose a cry that we could hear from the front door.
Holy shit, there's something huge in here. It's after us. We're coming down the stairs. We need...
But the radio cut out, as if either it was dropped or knocked out of Corey's hand.
Pack 2, hold position. Cover their 6.
Cato booted in the door with a powerful kick, and I winced as it splintered, but we followed him in, Jericho taking the middle position while I brought up the rear, flashlights flickering as they activated the beams at the end of their weapons. I didn't have one, so I pointed my gun down range, careful not to flag anyone. The sound of something heavy descended the stairs, mingling with the noise of something else that was moving into the showroom. Enemy, northeast, 3 meters. Jericho growled, and Cato shot him a displeased look and ordered everyone into a crouch. I started to crouch, but Jericho hissed at me to stay standing. That shotgun will deafen us if you fire from down there. Stay up and engage. We'll catch them as they come around. My barrel trembled slightly as we waited, the sound of thunderous footsteps echoing from the showroom. When 2 figures emerged around the corner, it took every ounce of restraint not to fire. Corey and Victoria raised their hands, pleading with us not to shoot. A shadow loomed menacingly behind them. Cato shouted for them to drop as they hit the ground. The 3 of us unleashed a barrage of fire onto the creature behind them. The assault rifles of the 2 hellhounds roared, peppering the door frame with holes. And when I fired my shotgun, it felt like a linebacker had slammed into my shoulder. The wall was scorched where the shrapnel had hit, and a pained roar erupted from the other side. The creature staggered back, driven by the force of our assault, and as it retreated into the showroom, we stood tense, bracing for its return. And amidst the chaos, Victoria and Corey lay on the ground, Corey shielding her with his body. And when he lifted his head, relief washed over me to see that he was uninjured.
Pack 3!
Cato shouted, and the two of them scuttled back behind us to avoid catching any stray bullets.
Pack 1, move forward. We can end this now if we can trap them in the showroom. Pack 3, watch our 6 in case others come from the basement.
With that, we shuffled into the showroom while Corey and Victoria watched our backs, even sandwiched between two competent marksmen like Jericho and his son. I had never felt less safe. What I had seen rise behind my friends was far worse than the thing in the basement that night before. It had looked as large as a bear. If this was what was haunting my mortuary, I wasn't sure any of us could stand against it. If this was our enemy, we might need to leave before things got much worse. The showroom was a shadowy mire as we entered. The caskets sat like ghostly humps against the wall, and when Corey reached out to turn the lights on, the dry click sounded like the break of a twig in a thicket. He flipped the switch a few times, hoping that it would fluke, but the room remained shrouded in darkness. The hounds flung their flashlights from side to side, ready to catch the beast in a lunge, but the silence was thick and oppressive. "Swap to the 45, Jericho whispered. "Save some of those incendiary rounds for the basement." I nodded, slinging the strap onto my shoulder as I pulled the very heavy gun from its holster. Naturally, this was when the creature chose to rise from the biggest, most expensive coffin that I had on display and came slobbering towards us. "Left!" Cato moved out a little as they spat hot lead into the approaching nightmare. I turned and fired, wincing as the wood of the casket splintered and blossomed. The gun felt like a cannon, bucking in my grip, but the automatics seemed to be doing more damage. The creature staggered back, pushed by the bullets, and when it fell across the casket, the display split in two, leaving me with 2 caskets instead of 1. Both hounds were panting as they trained their guns on the creature, walking forward slowly and ready to fire again. Cato prodded it with a boot, keeping his barrel trained on the still form. When he was satisfied that it was dead, he nodded at Jericho. Jericho slid his gun into its holster, but the blade that came out had a harsher rasp. I looked up to see a knife wreathed in midnight. The metal seemed to smoke slightly, a smog hanging around it like an aura. Jericho had drawn it from his hip, and the darkness around it seemed to pale in comparison. "Watch my 6, he commanded, stopping briefly, the knife disappearing as quickly as it had come. "Get your weapons ready. We are not done yet." Cato looked alarmed.
What's wrong? Do you want the—
"This is not the one that I am after. This one is barely more than a whelp. We have to find the big one, and we won't be safe till we do." And as a roar came from the basement, we all turned towards the hallway that would take us to the basement.
Push forward,
Cato said, Jericho taking up his rifle as he popped out the old magazine and put in a fresh one, and Cato did the same. If this thing right here had taken a lot of pounding just to go down, then the bigger one, that might need every bullet that we have. Jericho put a hand out as he approached the basement door, and Cato called for Pack 2 to get a status update.
"We're set here. Priest says we may proceed when ready."
Cato growled in disgust, but before he could remind Louis to say over, Jericho plucked the radio from his hand. "Is the back door open?" he whispered, missing his son's exasperated look.
"Yeah, something took it off the hinges,"
Louis whispered. "Shield your eyes," Jericho said, taking something off his belt that made me wince. Whoa, I said, putting a hand up on his arm. "You can't just toss a grenade down there. I still need to do business when all of this is done." And Jericho smirked. "Mortician, if I wasn't interested in that pelt, this whole operation would be done from the exterior with C4. Secondly, I know what I am doing. These were developed in the Vatican. Anything that is down there certainly will not like it, which will allow us to gain the advantage should the basement be full." And without another word, Jericho tossed the grenade into the basement. I closed the door, but I still saw the bright flash of the harsh halogen bomb erupt beneath it. The noise from inside was hellish. The screams of the damned. And when he pulled the door open again, we quickly moved into the cramped confines of my basement workstation. The stench hit me first, a foul miasma of spoiled meat and weak old porta-potty. It was like the den of a hibernating bear, with old food and waste and blood mingling together. The harsh strobe from the grenade illuminated the space as the two hellhounds charged in, firing into the ensembled screamers. 4 of them were sprawled over the prep tables, grotesque amalgamations of man and beast. I immediately recognized the one wearing my father's skin, crouching inside a cold storage drawer. Bullets sparked off the metal as they shredded the lesser skinwalkers, and I turned and fired as more shadows emerged from the storage area behind them. I needn't have wasted the bullets. Corey had emerged and transformed subtly, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever look at him the same way again. His face stretched slightly as his fangs fully emerged, his eyes darkened and took on a sunken look, and he didn't even so much as glide towards them with an oily fluidity. Victoria's transformation was also subtle, wings sprouting from her back and a tail flicked from her lower back. And despite these additions, she still looked mostly human. She followed right behind him, her heels clacking down the stairs before she sprang onto the fray like a wild cat. Her hands shot out and the skinwalkers cried as their tarry blood splattered the walls. I had to give her credit. I could never have made that look half as good in heels. Corey, for his part, was a whirlwind of fury. He slashed with his clawed hands, biting and hissing like a cornered cat. The pair of skinwalkers that had charged in with such confidence quickly reconsidered, and as they fled towards the basement door, they were in for a surprise, because Father Pierce stood at the top of the stairs, holding a pair of bright green water pistols with the seriousness of an action hero about to take down some fleeing goons.
Vaya con Dios,
he said, and the holy water took the fleeing horrors in the eyes as they came up the basement steps. They hissed and they spat, and that wasn't what really got them in the end. When they stumbled into the opening of the basement, they seemed to hit an invisible wall of electricity, and something ozone wafted through the basement. It was easy to pick out amongst the cordite that was being spent, and I wondered what exactly Pierce had put together there.
Cursed are those who stand against the righteous,
Father Pierce said, crossing himself as he turned back to the parking lot. All of this had happened in a matter of moments, maybe 10 or 15 seconds to be exact, and as the gunfire ceased, an ear-screeching silence fell around us. And then it became screeching a moment later, and I heard what sounded like a herd of nightmares pounding out of the woods bordering the mortuary.
"We got company,"
Louis yelled, and a moment later his shotgun belched out a concussion like a mortar shell.
Pack 2, move to his location.
Cato yelled, and Corey and Victoria went after a less than confident tap as the space between the basements and the outside.
Mortician, go with them. They may need your...
No, Jericho barked, throwing down his rifle and taking out his knife. He stays.
He's useless here. They could use his...
Cato started, but Jericho turned, his eyes burning. He will witness my victory, as will you. And that settled it for Cato. And as Jericho stalked forward, the freezer door rattled ominously. The creature was in there, just waiting for someone to open the freezer and get a face full of awful, and Jericho knew it. His hand slid into his sidearm, and with a quick shot, he took the handle of the freezer, letting it groan open slowly. Just like a horror movie. The creature inside did not hesitate. As it came boiling out, I saw that it had finally shed my father's skin. God, it was a horrible sight. Something that hurt my brain to look at. It resembled a nightmare concoction of animals shoved into an oven, merging into a grotesque amalgamation. I could make out individual features, a hoof there, a wing, feathers, and fur melded together. But it adhered to none of them. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, as if it had too many bones, gliding towards Jericho as if the laws of nature and science did not apply to it. And maybe they didn't. Jericho, however, remained unfazed. He leaped at the creature, snarling like an attack dog as he drove his blade into it. The thing screamed in pain, a sound so piercing that it made me cover my ears as it rocketed through my skull. It hadn't expected the knife to injure it. This creature was used to being the biggest fish in the tank, to doing whatever it wanted, and now it was experiencing something entirely foreign. Jericho didn't stop with the initial stab. He moved relentlessly, practically running over to the creature as he slashed and stabbed, using its surprise to his advantage. It was a surprise that did not last long. The Elder Walker whipped its arm back in a blur, causing Jericho to stagger. He clutched his chest briefly, checking for wounds before lunging back into the fray. The skinwalker was prepped, and they exchanged blows, Jericho slightly lagging behind. The blood that splattered to the floor was thick and viscous, but Jericho wasn't the only one taking hits. And suddenly he cried out as his arm hung limp to his side, blood staining his white shirt. Another blow landed, accompanied by the sickening snap of something breaking beneath his vest. He crashed against the prep table with enough force to make me fear for his spine, and as the skinwalker closed in, I feared I might witness the hellhound's demise right then and there in my basement. And just as the tension peaked, gunfire erupted to my left. The creature shrieked as bullets tore into it, courtesy of Cato, who fired round after round into the enraged horror.
Get the fuck off of my father,
he growled, but it was like pebbles hitting a giant. Moments later, the creature lunged at us, slamming into Cato with enough force to make him cough up blood. Then, to my astonishment, its body began to liquefy, wrapping around him like a fluid embrace. Cato struggled to free himself, but the creature's semi-liquid form engulfed him as it tried to swallow him whole. The fear in the young wolf's eyes was unmistakable.
Cato!
Jericho yelled, but I was already moving. The shotgun roared like a cannon when I pulled the trigger, working the side as fast as I could. I kept firing until it clicked dry, my hands coated in the gore as the creature churned under the relentless barrage. It moved away from Cato, his eyes showing a hint of relief as he looked up at me. His clothes were torn, as if moths have ravaged him, and even his vest had bullet holes. The exposed skin looked burned, like a severed sunburn rather than a chemical injury. It dawned on me that if the creature had kept him away any longer, he might have begun to dissolve. I discharged the shotgun and I pulled Cato away as Jericho pounced on the wounded creature. Jericho had transformed into a feral figure, his body now covered in hair over the little exposed skin that I could see. His eyes blazed a deep crimson, and beside his knife, he tore into the creature with his claws. The skinwalker struggled to escape, attempting to find a place to regroup, but Jericho relentlessly pushed it. I dragged Cato to the far corner of the basement, away from the unfolding battle, and he offered no resistance. One of his legs hung limp, while the other aided me in moving him, and meanwhile Jericho was like an animal, tearing into the creature with ferocity. His mouth had elongated into a muzzle lined with sharp teeth, and his own blood mixed with that of the creature that he was battling. Despite his attempts to flee, Jericho had it cornered. And as Jericho loomed over the creature, its avian-like head turned up at him. And with a swift motion, Jericho's blade descended into its eyes, causing it to scream so loudly that it seemed to shatter the glass in the basement's small windows. And Cato and I lie still, and I was afraid that the panting creature might come for us next. Jericho stood over his kill, dragging breath into his lungs. And when he turned to us, I saw him slip the strange blade away as he came staggering in our direction. I reached for my gun, but my hand couldn't find the finger grip. This gore-splattered god stood over us, his red eyes blazing. And when he spoke, it was like hearing the voice from the bottom of a well.
I'm going to fall down in a second. But unless you want me to die right here in the mortuary, I suggest you get me some food.
And then he fell back, sending up dust and refuse as he hit the concrete. And I breathed a sigh of relief. It appeared that the nightmare was over. The aftermath was rough. I'm not gonna lie to you. But I'm glad to say that after 3 weeks of cleaning, renovating, and just plain old healing, the mortuary and its mortician are back up and running. Cato and I, once I fed him enough to get his leg moving again, carried Jericho up the house so that way he could rest. Corey and Victoria had to help us. The mercenary was far sturdier than he looked, and we got him into the guest room before we could start tending to him. Corey went to go get meat, and I searched for what I could in the kitchen, and Victoria tended to his wounds under Cato's critical eye. It turned out that she actually was a nursing assistant. Who knew?
A girl has to have a hobby,
she said when I mentioned it.
Plus, sometimes you have to get creative when you need a meal,
She added, making Corey squirm a little. and in the aftermath, the other skinwalkers had fled. At least, that's what Father Pierce had said.
Once the Elder Walker died, they all took off. I guess they thought anything that could kill a demigod would make short work out of them.
And Pierce had left at dawn, promising that he would be back in a few days. Louis, Corey, and Victoria left quickly after the battle, but Corey and Victoria returned the next night to help me clean up. Victoria had also wanted to check up on Jericho to make sure that he was on the mend, and had been pretty satisfied with what she had found. After a checkup, under the watchful eye of Cato, of course, she had come down to help me clean up the basement, which had gotten the worst of it. They're good friends, and I'm sure glad to have them. We had cleaned up some, but we had left the Elder Walker right where he lay. He was imposing, even dead, and I know I glanced over my shoulder more than once to make sure that he was still there. I don't think that we honestly expected him to stay dead, and every day that we came down to find that he was still lying there seemed like a miracle. On another level, though, I think that we also knew why we left him down there. The hellhound convalescing in my guest room still had to be paid for his work, and we let that payment sit right there. I had taken Dad's skin out of the body drawer that the Elder Walker had left it in, and it was the strangest thing that I had ever done. It was as if someone had perfectly flayed him, taking the inside out so that way they could just wear him like a bodysuit. His hair, his teeth, everything was perfectly intact. And I mean everything. I put him in the crematorium on site, ensuring that no one could ever do this again. Whatever deal that he had with the dead thing in my basement was over, and it was time for my father to rest in peace. Jericho had laid in my guest room for 3 days, eating and resting and getting hellhound blood all over my mother's comforter. But on the morning of the 3rd day, I found him in the kitchen eating a pork chop and raw eggs and figured that he had recovered. Cato had stayed by his side all 3 days, and this was the first time that I had seen them apart. I assumed that he was sleeping in the chair in the guest room, which was good because the kid hadn't slept much in the last couple days. "I want to thank you for letting me rest here. I hope that I haven't been too much of a burden," Jericho growled. "Really, it's okay, think nothing of it," I told him. "I'd kind of have to say that you helped me more than I helped you." "Is it still in the basement?" he asked, and I nodded, knowing what he had meant. "Good," Jericho said, bringing me back to the present. "I need to focus on our business before I head back to the office." And I followed him to the basement, still not liking how he wobbled on his foot, but he hadn't asked my opinion. And when we got to the basement, Jericho just stood there and stared at it for a moment, not quite sure himself if it was real. It was as if he had dreamed it, and now seeing it made him wonder if he was still asleep. He drew the knife out slowly, but it didn't seem to move him any more than the corpse had. "It's weird," he said finally. "It's hard to believe that it's real. I've killed a manner of creatures, ended bloodlines, sundered species. But never in my long life have I ever thought that I would kill a god." "A demigod?" I said, confused. "You said that it was a demigod, a semi-immortal." "Kid, these things were the messengers to the old gods, creatures that, according to Native American legend, created the world. Killing this thing is like standing over the body of Michael or Raphael or maybe Lucifer. I killed something that saw the beginning of the universe. This is extremely humbling." I silently agreed, and when he finally felt ready, he took the pelt. It wasn't hard. He sliced it from the creature in a series of careful strokes, and the skin was like velvet midnight as it came free. He threw it over his shoulder, like he might a familiar old coat, and thanked me for the opportunity. He and Cato were gone, and an hour later I was left alone in a house that was suddenly too quiet. But that didn't last long, though. I was sweeping the front porch when a familiar Escalade pulled up with someone in the front seat. Father Pierce got out and opened the door to reveal someone that I had missed very much. My mother had climbed out, slowly and deliberately, and spread her arms wide to accept my hug, as well as my whispered apologies and numerous tears.
I missed you too, kiddo.
Father Pierce would stay for dinner, and then just leave right after sunset.
Call me anytime, and may God go with you,
he said, putting his hat back on in his usual flair. It took some time, some contractors who were willing to not ask a whole lot of questions, as well as a great deal of money that I had laid back. But the mortuary is open again. The caskets are set in the showroom, and the fellowship hall has some new carpets. The basement looks brand new. Well, mostly because it is, I suppose. And we are ready, once again, to receive new clients. So, if you're a beastie of dubious parentage who's looking for a service to lay someone close to you to rest, look no further than Garvey Mortuary. And if not, I'm not honestly sure how I'll keep the lights on, so please, let us help make your funeral an event to remember.